And so as we just saw in the video, in areas with pervious surfaces, you have either fields or forests, you have natural infiltration. So when it rains, it slowly trickles down into the groundwater table, you have it absorbed by plants. But in cities such as New Haven, we have a lot of paved impervious area. And so when it rains, it drains, and then you can see it going right off of the concrete and into the storm drains, whether they're separate or combined. And that has a lot of repercussions for our water quality, both in terms of the river and sound here. And so one of our ways to manage it, what Save the Sound is doing, is through a residential rain garden project. And so we're looking at managing the rainwater close to the source. And so in this case, on a residential property, we're looking at, as it rains and water is going onto residential roofs and flowing off through gutters into storm drains, whether it's separated and flowing off onto impervious area, or if it's combined and flowing directly into the combined sewer system, how to disconnect that and reroute the water. So instead of going into the storm sewer, it's going into a rain garden in this case. Yeah, so that didn't change. So this is kind of a quick and overview. This is actually Dorina Bubakar, who's in the back property, and she has a rain garden now. She's going to talk to you shortly about her experience. But this was an area before that was connected, and so using volunteers, we ended up from this all the way to a rain garden. And so, what is a rain garden? A rain garden is a shallow depression, usually about 6 inches deep, designed to capture and filter and infiltrate rainwater. And so we often, when we're out with homeowners, refer to them as a really shallow bathtub that's about 6 inches. And so as it rains, the water is able to be kind of captured by that area. And so in this case, we're disconnecting downspouts and we're rerouting those into the rain garden. And so I can go over a little bit of an overview of what that looks like, and as we're going from start to finish, what happens in terms of the rain garden installation. Both NHS and Save the Sound has been contacting homeowners in the West River watershed and figuring out what areas are the greatest need for disconnecting downspouts and installing rain gardens. And so to do that, we've been doing a lot of homeowner outreach, and Adam from NHS is going to talk about that shortly in terms of what that entails. But what we're looking at is, when we're at a house and trying to figure out if we can do a rain garden, we're looking at are their downspouts disconnected, or are they flowing into a storm sewer? If they're disconnected, are they going onto lawn, impervious area, or are they going into someone's driveway, which is then flowing into the street and into the storm sewers? We're looking at, is the land sloped away from the house, or is it sloping towards the house and you have water going into your basement? Is there a lot of shade? Is it really sunny? So one of the things is, is there kind of constraints on a site? Is there a place to do a rain garden? Is that something that's a potential? And once we've done that, we look at the roof area and say, okay, if we're a bird flying over that house, what does their roof look like? What is the approximate size? And so from that sizing, we can determine, based on where their downspouts are, what is the volume of stormwater that's coming down a pipe and could potentially be diverted into a rain garden. And so we base that off of how much of the roof area is going through each downspout on a house. If a rain garden is approximately 6 inches, what would that then make the size of the rain garden? And that's kind of an equation that can be modified based on how large the roof area, how deep the rain garden, and can be adjusted to fit a site. So I think on the next slide you have a couple examples of, this is Doreen's house again, and so we looked at her roof area and then said, in this location it was a small site, and so because of the site sizing constraints, we ended up doing a deeper rain garden, so it almost came out to be more of a hybrid bioswale rain garden that allowed water to infiltrate a bit deeper, but also in a smaller area. And so rain gardens are something that can be adapted on a site-by-site basis based on what the needs and constraints are from both a site and a homeowner perspective. And then the next thing we do is figure out, all right, what's below ground? And so as we're digging, are we going to run into utilities? Are we going to run into an existing foundation? So figuring out what's below. There's a resource called Call Before You Dig, which you call and they'll come out each a different agency that for utilities will come out and mark where there's utilities, and so that tells us what kind of existing infrastructure exists below the ground that we might not be able to see when we just see a grass lawn. And then the next thing is saying, what does the ground look like? Will this water infiltrate? Do we need to add soil? And so in New Haven, we're really lucky in that the infiltration and how fast the water is being absorbed into the ground it's very sandy, which means the water moves very quick through the soil. And so we're lucky here that when we install rain gardens or any form of green infrastructure technique, the water is going to be absorbed pretty quick. And so that's great in terms of not having concerns about a kind of a backflow or any sort of water remaining in the rain garden, and also for the plants to quickly absorb. And then we look at plants. And so when we're installing rain gardens in New Haven, we're really conscious to make sure that those plants are plants that are going to be particularly hardy and strong and low maintenance, and are plants that are used to growing in this environment. And so one of the pieces that's important to the rain garden process is using local seeds in plants that I've, for years, adapted to New Haven growing conditions, and likely will continue to thrive here. And so one of the pieces looking at what's native to this area and what will continue to grow really well in these conditions, and also what are the plants like. So kind of just like us, some plants will really like being around water, some of them are a little bit more drought tolerant, and so figuring out placement based on what the needs and conditions are of the plants. And so one of the pieces, I think the next slide is kind of after we've done an initial site assessment and looking at, all right, what are the conditions? Where is the downspout? You can see right here. This is a example of a downspout in a conceptual kind of photo rendering of a rain garden. And so this was a site visit that Adam and I did at a house. And so we looked at, is it really shade tolerant? In this case, there was a big tree not too far away. So we needed plants that were very shade tolerant. It was very sandy soil. We had our homeowner we worked with was like, you know what, I really want low maintenance, just a simple color scheme, things like that. And so one of the big pieces of this project is working with homeowners from an educational standpoint throughout the entire process. And so the homeowners participate in the site assessment with us. They kind of tell their story of what they're interested in from an aesthetic point, from a stormwater point. They know better than we do in terms of, in a rainstorm, where are they seeing the water flowing? A lot of them will say, hey, in the winter we have this downspout that's disconnected, but we have these big ice buildups, and so we're falling when we're walking out on our driveway. Or in this case, we had a big open sandy area that wasn't being used, and the homeowner said, I really like just something simple and low maintenance, and I don't want to have to worry about it year after year. And so finding rain garden plants that were really tolerant and very easy and shade tolerant was particularly important there. And so working throughout the entire process to make residents stakeholders of the rain garden, make them invested in actually continuing forward, is a really integral part of this project. And so that's the same. This is another example of a planting plan. And so keep it pretty simple in terms of plants that can come back year after year. And so these are all perennials. We started a project this past year to grow native plants from seed. And so working with a local greenhouse in New Haven to grow plants that the seeds were collected from New Haven and then will go back full circle into the ground. So that was a really exciting piece for us. And then the most important part is the hard work of volunteers and residents. And so that's really the piece that makes this project run, and it really couldn't be done without that component. And so from start to finish on this pilot residential rain garden project, it's all homeowner and volunteer driven. And so we have the homeowners helping with the site assessments, selecting the plants, kind of understanding the process of the infiltration test and why things can go in certain places and not in others, and kind of talking about what they're interested in, what they want to see, and their different needs. And then recruiting residents in the neighborhoods and volunteers. And so this is Regional Water Authority, and they actually helped us. Ron's going to talk in a minute about their experience and kind of shared interest in water quality. And so this is a condo association on Whaley Ave, and so we had completely both condo association residents and RWA came out to install in record timing 2 very large rain gardens. And so that's an important piece, is getting everyone to understand and getting shovels in the ground. And so with residential rain gardens of this size, it really can be done for very low cost and low maintenance and really kind of brute force. And so for all of these, we were having volunteers dig the depressions, install the plants, and then do the final touches, including the downspout disconnections. And so that's been a really big piece, is from start to finish, it's entirely volunteer and resident-driven, which is fabulous. And then there's additional residential green infrastructure techniques, and there's some places where we'll do site assessments, and for given constraints, a rain garden might not be acceptable, or it doesn't fit the conditions. And so sometimes, what a lot of folks in New Haven are doing are, what are alternative ways to install different green infrastructure techniques, and how can we manage stormwater? And there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And so there's times that a residential rain garden might work well. There's times it'll be in the municipal right-of-way, and something a bit larger and deeper might be better due to size constraints. There's times where there just isn't enough impervious area to really install a rain garden. So here's an example of a rain garden that was installed at a site. This is actually a site that also has a rain garden, but there was an alternative side that couldn't have one, and so we installed a rain barrel. And so there's a lot of options. Ron's going to talk a little bit more about some of the both in terms of what they did with rain gardens, but also different, more of like industrial rain gardens and different styles of stormwater management. And so there's a lot of options, and it's exciting to pilot on a residential scale, but also exciting to build on the momentum of New Haven and green infrastructure work. And Ron, I know you have, I'll turn this over to you to let you speak for a bit. I know you have this one over there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The rain garden project we did with United Way took two aspects of the water authority, our community outreach and our stormwater management. But this project really, picked our interest because it was doing what we do, which is stormwater. Actually, in my department, which is environmental planning, is stormwater management. And through our site plan review program, we actually have been advocating for stormwater management systems throughout our watershed areas. The good thing is that now pretty much zoning regulations are actually, town zoning regulations are requiring stormwater management, where 10 years ago it was, okay, we're just going to take a pipe, we're going to stick it in the ground, it's going to go out to the street, and it's going to hit the first culvert into the closest stream or wetland. So now towns are actually requiring stormwater management on site. Problem is, because Lake Whitney, this is specific to Lake Whitney, is so developed, we actually started about 17 years ago we inventoried all the direct stormwater discharges into the lake. And we looked at that and we said, well, how are you going to fix this problem? This was during the beginning of the design and construction of the new Whitney filter plant, so there was a whole bunch of management issues we were going through with the neighborhoods around Whitneyville and all that. So we looked at it and we said, well, the only way to solve a problem is to start with, just take the first step. And we built one stormwater treatment system, which was through a 319 grant funding. Built that one. We did some analysis of the chemistry of the water coming in and going through the plant. We found out that these things actually work. Technically, you can consider them rain gardens on steroids. Actually, some of them are several acres in size, and they capture anywhere from 50 to 100 acres of runoff. The neighborhood cost is about $300,000 to $500,000 for each one. Design, construction, and maintenance of that. So that's where we're getting into trying to improve the water quality before it gets into the lake. And then the poster over there shows some of the different, the map around Lake Whitney of the stormwater treatment systems. A couple of them are actually not even on our property. If in Hamden, if you go by the Stop and Shop on Dixwell Avenue, you drive behind the back of it, that stormwater treatment system was actually put in by the developers. When they were coming to us, there was a lot of neighborhood opposition to the original Hamden Wall project. They hired Malone and Broom. Malone and Broom called us up and said, what do we need to do to get your blessing? What would you do? What do we have to do in order for you to say this is not going to have an impact on water quality? And we turned around and we told him, he says, collect 1 inch of rainfall over the entire site and store it on site. And they said, okay. And the next thing you know, here they came up with a design, they built it. We sat back, the neighbors were still against some of the development. We said, well, this is what needs to be done in order to make sure that this project doesn't have an impact to Lake Whitney. So that's.
So I was brought in on this because I coordinate volunteer events with Neighborhood Housing Services of New Haven. And we do about 30 volunteer events per year with, we had over 400 volunteers last year, about 3,000 volunteer hours. So in a lot of ways, I'm just looking for things to do with these volunteers. And this ended up being a perfect project. And along the way, we got to educate the volunteers and we got to educate the residents and the homeowners about green infrastructure in general, but also really the importance of stormwater management, which when I first got involved in this, I knew like virtually nothing about. So Hopkins, they were sort of our guinea pig volunteer group. And they were great sports about it. We had to dig a 3-foot deep hole. As Anna mentioned, the site with Doreen's house had a utility line running right down the middle of our plan. So we had to readjust. And luckily we had high school seniors who were willing to just dig. If we told them to dig to China, they would try. Here's Kathy doing some of the volunteer education for the Hopkins students. We got a really nice opportunity with them because they were volunteering with us throughout the week. We got to spend some time with them going over the reasons why we're doing this, and then also a little bit of the kind of technical side, the technical piece of the garden. Although they mostly just did the digging, and then we had a NHS staff team building day as part of NeighborWorks Week. NeighborWorks Week is a week it's supposed to be a week of community-based events, and this is something that happens all around the country because we're part of a national network of nonprofits and the network is called NeighborWorks America. So this was. It's interesting when you are working with regular volunteers, but it's a little bit more challenging when you're kind of bossing around your colleagues. But still, they were all really good sports about it. And we have our head of fundraising and our executive assistant there working on their green thumbs, and Kathy's supervising. So then here is a property in Newhallville. This belongs to Florence, and she got this plot of land from the city when she bought her house. It was a vacant parcel, and the city has a lot of these, and they're sometimes willing to give people a free plot of land, or I don't know, maybe they buy it for $1 as a symbol. But the thing was that she had a whole lot of construction debris in there. There was like an old telephone pole. There was big rocks and concrete chunks and things like that. And so she called us up because she had heard that we do some volunteer work and we could maybe help clean up this lot. But we're not going to just stop there. We're going to take it to the next level. And so we got a rain garden installed there. So there's the after. And you can see we had a volunteer group from Yale. Florence is there in the middle. She cajoled her grandson into joining us, and then her neighbor Harriet who lives across the street. We're going to get to her later. So what was really neat about this project was that we had a bit of extra time and some interesting constraints from her, so that we were able to be a little more creative with it. She wanted this to be a space so that she could sit with her grandkids when they come over to visit. And we had to make a pretty big rain garden because it's pulling water from 2 downspouts. We eventually started thinking, okay, well, how about kind of a kidney shape? And I don't have a good picture that shows the actual shape. But then a light bulb went off in our heads, and we thought, why don't we put the rain garden in such a way that when she is with her grandkids, and if they have a ball that kind of gets away from them and they might otherwise run chasing it into the street, what if we actually build a rain garden in such a way that it kind of is a natural catch for that ball? So that was a neat thing that we got to work into that. There were also a lot of rocks left behind. Not only is New England soil very rocky, as most of you probably know, somehow I think they took all the rocks from all the surrounding parcels and put them all into this one. But it presented us with an opportunity. We took those rocks and we placed them in a line, and one of my fondest memories from that was she actually had a couple of her grandkids there, and they were helping to pick up the rocks and kind of place them around the border. So that was really neat. So then here's the group shot after our installation with Regional Water Authority. You can see Ron back there. This was a really great project. Mostly what we were excited about was the opportunity to work with Jackie. Jackie went through our resident leadership program. I'm avoiding using the last names, but it's on. I keep wanting to. So Jackie went through our resident leadership program, and she then went on to participate in the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven resident leadership program. And then she organized all the people at her condo, formed an association board, and then she said, all right, now we need something else to do. So she heard about this rain garden project, reached out to us, and now she's kind of gotten them all organized. They're in the front there. They're a little bit older in years. They got to mostly observe that day, but they all got to kind of pick out which plants they want to help maintain. So it was really neat how engaged they were and how supportive they were as we were installing this. Go ahead. So here's Harriet again. We installed a rain garden at her property right across the street from Florence's. And so as we start getting ready to plan some more installations, we're maybe going to do some tours in that area. The fact that she got to participate in the one at Florence's was really nice. My main goal in sharing those stories was to show that this can be an exciting project, that people can get involved in it, whether they're young, whether they're old, whether they have experience with this, whether they don't have experience with this. And it ends up being just a kind of neat group project. You get a real sense of accomplishment when you're done. And so keep an eye out when I'm trying to recruit more volunteers, and hope to see you guys at some of those installations. Thank you.
I just wanted to share that when UConn hosted a rain garden training, that I attended that. I think it was 2 days, right? 2 days at neighborhood housing. So I learned the old way, which was measuring the rooftop and the circumference of the building to figure out the water, the rain coming down the spout. But now they have a way that you can do it right from looking at Google, the map thing. But I also had an opportunity, like they featured here, is to have the rain garden actually put at my home, which was really nice. I kept saying, because my idea of a rain garden, even what we did at neighborhood housing, is a whole lot. And I was like, I don't want something extremely big. We want something simple, something that we could maintain easily. And so you saw, even that last picture that Adam showed was also my rain garden. So today you're getting a good look at what you should see in the springtime at my home. I just looked outside and I said, oh my goodness, I can't take any picture of this. It's just looking like nothing. But I just wanted to share that as far as homeowners or people who are interested in learning more about it and residential stuff, I wanted to show a picture of, this one. So this one is how it looks. And actually I had a rain barrel. I actually went to a rain barrel training workshop with Lynn, and I got my own rain barrel. And so right over here is a rain barrel, and they created a spout here so that the rain could go through the rocks into the garden. The next picture is, this is a family-owned house. So for many years, whenever it rains really hard, there would be this massive puddle on the sidewalk into the street. Now that it rains, we don't have the rain flooding in this area, in that greenscape there. That's it.
So, we have the natural water cycle. The sun picks up the water and spreads it across the landscape, and the earth has developed ways to handle all that water. But then, we build stuff. And so we go, as Anna points out, from a very small amount of runoff, which is not a problem, to potentially a lot of it because of all the hard surfaces that we have out there. And you can think about kind of conventional way of dealing with water in cities, and there's kind of three pieces to it, sorry. So there's the lot level, which we've been talking about a lot here, kind of the individual homeowner. Then you got to carry the water away, so there's some kind of conveyance infrastructure, and then eventually you have to dispose of that water. And that's kind of the old way of doing it. Pour a lot of concrete, have a bunch of pipes, treat water as if it were some kind of a nuisance or risk or threat, rather than seeing it for the resource that it actually is. And what I want to talk about is a little bit about the, how, and this is I think kind of the theme here, is how we can deal with that water at its source, treat it as a resource, and take advantage of it. Now, the way we used to deal with this is, as I said, with a bunch of pipes in the ground, and we have these catch basins, and a lot of people think of those just as a way to get water from the street to the pipe, but they're actually like little mini treatment plants, and if you look at them in cross-section, if they're designed properly, there's a big sump down there, and stuff that is heavy can sink, and stuff that is light can float, and especially if you have a hood on it so that the floatables don't go down into the sewer. But it's really important that, this is an interesting thing that I ran into. Did you know that as a homeowner you're supposed to clear the catch basin grate in front of your house? I'm sure that this $100 fine has probably never been levied on anyone, but in theory, tomorrow when it snows, you're supposed to be out there with your snow shovel.
Forget about
it. Forget about it, right. But the big thing is that you gotta maintain these things, and we tend to sort of build and then kind of forget. But as you see from Rosa DeLauro sign being here, this is in New Haven, and periodically is usually like every year or two, either with one of these suction trucks or with a clamshell, you're supposed to get that junk out of there that I just showed you earlier, which is, you might say, well, that's just dirt. Well, just dirt can be really bad because it often carries a lot of the toxic stuff that we're most concerned about. And then we're up against the fact that, when we used to think about water as a threat, we wrote zoning regulations that require kind of curb and gutter, and so water is diverted, keep it away from the plants, and you have this lose-lose situation where you're creating risk of flooding because you're taking that quick pulse of water from the city, and you're keeping it from getting to the plants that really need it. It's really a crazy approach to water management, isn't it? When you think about it. This is one that I took. This is at the Stop and Shop out in Brantford, Guilford. Again, go ahead. It's lose-lose, right? they had to put in this catch basin and protect this tree from getting any water that would be flowing through it otherwise. It's like, wow, what are we thinking? Okay, so that's the old-fashioned way of thinking about it, and I think in Preaching to the Choir here, everybody knows that there's a better way of dealing with it, and that's treating water at its source. So, and I like to look at individual homes because it's interesting in a city like New Haven where we're separating the storm and sanitary sewers, and you look at the houses, and a lot of them used to have these connections to the sewer system, and the downspouts would run into there, and in theory, you're not supposed to be connected to those anymore. But we'll see. I'll show you a couple of examples. The better approach is, it's funny, I've already seen 3 different slides where someone was cutting a downspout and redirecting the water. And you can handle this water with essentially 0 cost, if you want to. So run it to the soil, don't run it into the sewer. You get some really crazy kind of Rube Goldberg things. They didn't want it to go into this pipe, so they ran it over to this driveway. Well, the water flows out into the street and is going back into this storm drain anyway, so it's a little bit crazy. Maybe they were worried about flooding into their basement or something. This is a Yale property. They're not necessarily the most forward-thinking in their water management. Okay, go ahead. And here's another one. They've clearly done something rather dramatic with the downspout here. If the water used to flow here and then would go out to the sewer, but they've redirected it. There's a couple of arrows here. They've redirected it so it's actually, you can't see it, but there's a big grassy area here, and the water is now going to the soils. And as Anna points out, in New Haven, we're blessed with insanely porous soils, and so if you can get it on a lawn area, it's going down. Some of my students I see here, and they've seen all this stuff before, and we think about these rain gardens and the beautiful plants, and plants are nice, but the heavy lifting is actually being done by the stuff in the subsurface, the bacteria and the fungi. And we could talk. This would be several lectures if I were to talk about it. But it's good that all this stuff is happening below the surface because this time of year the plants aren't doing very much at all. Right? So it's important that all of these incredible, complicated biogeochemical functions are taking place in the subsurface. Get the water down there, and it's naturally purified. So rain gardens and bioswales. This is the way you're supposed to do it. Don't put a curb there so that these plants can't get it. Instead, get the water to infiltrate so that list of things that I showed you can happen. And so we started building these in conjunction with the Urban Resources Initiative a few years ago. The city came to us. There used to be a big puddle here. This is on Trumbull Street. And they could have put in a catch basin. The connection with the pipe would have cost lots of money. These things aren't free, but they're much cheaper than it would be to install a catch basin. This is the first one that we installed in the city, and since then we've done a few dozen, and a lot more are on their way. So there's all sorts of different designs. These fences were required so that drunks and other people don't stumble into them, and it turned out to be a pretty expensive piece of the entire project, and also kind of vulnerable to like snowplows and stuff. And so we're going to new systems where we just have sort of a raised curb that will go around these. It's more durable. But look at this, right? Here's this catch basin. Water's going to flow down the street, get into this system, infiltrate into the subsurface. Great, right? And this thing is only there for extreme weather events when the system might be, the capacity might be exceeded, which doesn't happen very often. So the research that I'm doing, I'll just go over this pretty fast, is we want to actually, seems like a good idea, almost certainly is, people are installing these everywhere, but can we quantify that and figure out exact numbers about how effective they are, how big a storm they can handle, and so forth. And the important piece of this, I find, is you got to be able to actually measure the amount of water that's flowing. And that turns out to be a little trickier than you might expect. And so if you look at some of the bioswales that we've installed in the city, you'll see these curious boxes. And they're temporary. This is just another bioswale design. A bigger one, and you can see here's the catch basin. The water's coming down the street. It's going to get into this system and never has to go into the catch basin. Another approach, obviously, is the rain barrels that people have talked about. Now, I was doing the back-of-the-envelope calculation, and with a relatively small house, and even a rainstorm that's only half an inch, we get a lot of those in the course of the year. You need like 5 or 6 rain barrels if you want to quantitatively capture all that stuff. Which is not to say that you need to, but we're blessed with a lot of rainfall in this region, and you can get a lot of nice clean rainwater in there that you can then water your lawn with. But one is good. Get a half a dozen. Why not, right? Okay. So the research that I'm doing, let me tell you a little bit about my methods, which are kind of fun. At least I think so. First big project that we did was over on West Park Avenue. So this is just north of here, a couple of blocks, and the gold standard in research is to have a control and a treatment. And so the control is a system that you don't change in any way, and the treatment is the one that you do. And the beauty of that is you're measuring your systems. Let's say you have a dry year, and then you have a wet year. And so the control is telling you how the system that you've changed would be behaving in the absence of any variations that are happening naturally, right? So we picked these 2 locations, the treatment one where we installed, I forget, 8, I think, of these bioswales. In addition, at the same time the city was installing some below-ground cisterns, so we're capturing almost all the water coming off of this from the surface, and then the control system is outlined in red here. Didn't do anything there. They're about the same size. They have similar number of houses on them, and so it's, from the researcher's standpoint, it's really the way to go. I've rotated that. So, you go in and you look at these systems, and someone already showed like a bird's eye view photo of property, and so go ahead. Here's just one, and here's where I think it's kind of fun to think about your own property or your neighbor's property. If you take one property unit, so going to the middle of the crown in the road, kind of into your backyard, you've got the house, you've got driveways and walkways and things, and we're worried about what the impervious area there that's being covered. And when you do the analysis, you find all kinds of weird stuff. Like, so for example, in this house, this half of the roof is not draining to the sewer, but this half is because it's flowing into the driveway and out into the street. And we have to do that kind of analysis on a lot-by-lot basis. And the thing that you can go ahead. So all of the yellow area then is impervious stuff that's going into the storm drain network. And as I said, this part of the roof is not, and it wouldn't take much to make this piece not go there. And the individual homeowner can make relatively small decisions that don't cost very much, that could, in the aggregate, have a really big effect in terms of the amount of water that's getting into the storm drain system. So, I don't make my students do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And I went down into the sewer. This first system, we were working in the combined sewers, so it's a combination of stormwater and, sewage. It's pretty disgusting, let me tell you. But since then, we've been working mainly on the separated system, so we only have to look at stormwater. But it's important to do continuous monitoring in a city like New Haven because things change very rapidly on a minute-by-minute basis when you have a storm. So it's not okay to go out there once every hour. You really have to be collecting data sometimes every couple of minutes. And so we have these automated samplers. These used to be the automated samplers. Now we have electronic ones. And you go down there and we install these V-notch weirs, and then you can just measure water depth, and the water depth translates directly to a flow, and that's what you want to know, how much water is coming through. Now the other thing, we hear about the crumbling infrastructure in this country. This thing was built in 1910, and it looks like it was built yesterday. It's amazing the quality of the craftsmanship that they had 100 years ago. And so these are the combined sewers, and it looks like sewage, and it is sewage, trust me. But we're using the same kind of methods that we do above ground, and this is an experimental watershed that's over on Yale campus. And again, the whole idea is you put in a very simple device that measures the water depth, and you can, because of the known geometry and so forth, you can go directly from that depth measurement to how much water is coming through. Now I showed you that dipper box before. When you get to the street, it's a different matter. You can't have that V because there's no place for the water to pond behind it. And so instead we have these dipper boxes, which are actually designed to give you uniform flow out of several pipes. But what we did is we took the dipper, we connected it to an event logger that tells us how often it dips. So show the next one because that puts it in context. So we have the water flowing in from the street. It has to go through this dipper box before it gets into the swale. And again, it's another way of getting the measurement of the amount of water because you need to know the amount to understand the total impact of the system, both in terms of how effective is it at capturing water, but also how effective is it at capturing the junk that's in the water. So results, and this is like 3 more slides. So we're measuring water depth in these things, and you see that this is all several days of data all superimposed, and we see that, okay, this is 3, 4, 5 a.m. in the morning, water use in those 20 households goes down, so the amount of sewage goes down, then people get up in the morning, they take a shower and so forth, and water use goes up. Midday, there's fewer people around, and then in the evening, they use more. So what that was telling us is, control sewer shed, it says, right. It's telling us that our measurement method works, okay? Next one, I hope the future ones aren't like that. Okay. Here is a comparison of our control to our treatment. The bars is how much water was falling, and what we see is that the treatment system is somewhat smaller than the control system, but they look kind of like each other. And we get this nice linear relationship between them. That's telling me the control and the treatment are well matched. And so what did we find? And this, I think, is our last slide. And I'm just showing you typical data, meaning my best, for water, okay? And here's the one equation. Go ahead. Wait for it. There we go. So what it's telling us is that the green plus the purple equal the blue, and the green is the stuff that was captured by the swales. The purple is the residual that was not captured by the swales, and they equal the total that we find in the control. So a lot of the water is being captured by these systems. They do indeed work. And I could show you many, many, many more slides that demonstrate that same fact, but I won't. Next slide. What's happening next, and you'll probably see this as you drive around downtown, the next year of research, boy, really strange looking stuff, but we're looking at 2 different watersheds in the downtown area. You almost can't even tell where you are, but this is like Trumbull Street, Grove Street, State Street, so it's the main part of downtown, and each of these little green dots is a new bioswale that we're installing. There'll be something like 75 of them, and we're monitoring the flow that comes out of each of these larger watersheds. In addition, we're going to zoom in on 10 of them and think about how to optimize their design and make them the best they possibly can be.
I'm Gary. This is Tom Stroy. He's the Director of Engineering, so he actually does a lot of the actual bidding and constructing part. I run the facility there. So next slide. I think this picture here, just because, you know, one of the things we all look at here is that this is the system that was built. I think we've done a couple of tours here that, you know, we go back to the 1800s, and back in the day they put one pipe in the street, and so that's why we have combined systems, just to give you a little bit of a historical perspective. You know, any new areas, and you'll see on when we look at our separated versus combined areas, that the newer areas are separated because when they built those areas, they put a stormwater pipe in there. But if you still look at there, both pipes still go to the stream. So one of my points I always like to just speak about is that, you know, green infrastructure is good. You know, we're confined to only doing it in areas that have combined sewers because of we get our funding from, have that requirement, because that's the issue we're trying to address. But even when you have a separate system, you can see that you have all those same issues that everybody's spoken about. So I like to just, you know, kind of get that perspective of where we're coming from on our pipes. All right, next slide. Basically, the project we have, we're going to install some green infrastructure, is the West River watershed. So just kind of looking at that West River here on the map, and that's just the blow up of that area. Here's the map which is showing some of the separated areas, you know. Just back in 1997, when we started measuring the flows, we were somewhere above 125 million gallons per year. We're going out the overflows. Through a lot of the work we've done through separation, fixing the system there, putting in a one storage tank there, we've gotten the overflows down to about 40 million gallons per year on some of these average annual years. Again, though, like we have 14 CSO overflows. You know, there's about 150 plus stormwater outfalls over there. So you see the magnitude of that problem there. When we're talking about separation here, is you can see that the combined areas are the yellow ones. So you see all along here along the West River, that's why this has not, you know, been separated. It was a combined area. You can see that some of these areas in the red are partially separated there. So partially means that they actually go in for the roof leaders, or did they just attach kind of the catch basins to it? And then you can see the blue areas where we have, you know, it's separated. If you look to those are some of the, you know, the East Shore areas, some of the, you know, relatively newer areas as they were developed when the standard practice then was to put in that stormwater pipe there. You can see also too, these are where our CSOs are along the rivers here, basically because they're just trying to bring it out. You know, when they put these pipes in, the reason they did it was constant improvement. You know, they used to have outhouses on the property. We started growing there, living there too dense. You can't have too many houses with too many outhouses there. So then they put pipes down. They brought it to the nearest receiving stream, whatever brook there. So they used to come just down here to the West River off of that hill. And that got, you know, rid of the waste there, and it was much better for where you were living. You know, over time though, you start getting more and more dense down this river there. So then they built the Boulevard Interceptor, that 84-inch brick arch sewer that goes all the way down to the end of City Point there and goes out on that fishing pier is the actual structure that was built to get that water out. This is back in the day when, you know, the solution to pollution is dilution there, but that's how they built that, just to get it away from it here. So that's why we have these combined systems, and back then they were only putting the one pipe, so everything came down, and they actually liked the rainwater for some of the flushing action, you know, of it there. But now we started building treatment plants at the end of these pipes. Now you see where the Boulevard was, East Street Station, and the East Shore one there. So that's kind of that little quick history of why we have combined sewers there. We'll go to the next one. Hit the button again there. You know, how do we do it? You know, we have all this stormwater that's coming into us. I think we've all identified stormwater is, you know, is what's coming into us. We're equipped and ready to handle domestic sanitary sewage there. That's what we do day in and day out. But when it rains is when, you know, our job gets a lot harder. This is the Truman, the parking lot in front of Truman School. This is a 5 million gallon storage tank. So when that pipe, that 84-inch brick arch sewer is filling up from rainwater, before it starts going out those overflows into the river, it's going to fill into this tank here. So we're going to store 5 million gallons that would have gone out over there, and then we're going to pump it back out when our flows go down at the plant, so we can pump it out to treat it there. So, you know, that's the great infrastructure. Over there was some green infrastructure we're talking about. There's subsurface infiltration. I'm going to just talk about that in a minute, because we've been a big proponent of that with all of our development things that Tom has in his engineering department. If you're developing inside of any of our combined areas, you have to capture a 2-year, 6-hour storm on your property, because that's what we're mandated from EPA and DEP to control a 2-year, 6-hour storm, which is about 2.05, 2.06 inches of rain. So that's a pretty aggressive one there. Again, in harvesting too, you know, you've seen all that, the rain gardens, rain barrels there, all ways to capture that storm. You've seen bioswales here. I'm going to kind of flip through some of these because we all have the same pictures of the ones, and they're all pretty standard there. So we know they work. We've got the data here. Just to talk about that, you know, that infiltration underneath, because it's not as nice looking as those swales. We got nice plants growing up and all that, but we're making them underneath the parking lots. There's big infiltrators because New Haven has such a great sandy soil, and you can percolate water through that, you know, tremendously there. So we you know, require that. So we've done a lot here, and you know, thanks to Tom, we changed our design guidelines so that they have to you know, do this project there. It has to get approved by us in addition to along with the city there. we're also, so we, if you see some of the order of magnitude there, it's really, you take a lot of that, especially a big parking lot or somebody's putting in like that. Yale has been doing a lot of development lately, and they're in some of those areas there, so they've had to, capture there. So it's really nice when you're on that development swing to be able to have them putting that in there. Green redevelopment projects, so these are the ones all throughout the city. This is up to, present here, that we mandated them to do. So you can see these are in combined areas, but they're throughout the city, not just the West River there. Again, area project, next one. Our green infrastructure, because we're using Clean Water Fund money, and there's a lot of conditions associated with that. So one of the things to see, okay, we're not doing anything in any cemeteries. If it's state university property, we're not on there. Any of the state-owned roads, we're not doing that because those are state right-of-ways. We're doing it on the municipal properties there. We can't go on private property because of this funding there. And so that's where, still there's 60 miles left of roadway there. We went through this process of identifying which ones. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Separation distances, these are some of the requirements they have when they're putting in these green infrastructures here, just to give everybody a guideline for it. Next one. Again, this is how they ranked all these these locations for the bioswales, rain gardens there. Go next. And then we came up with this list of potential sites there. And that's what was evaluated, after we did the evaluation, that these ran into I think the next slide. There were 154 potential sites. We got down to 91 that were rated excellent by some of those rating structures there. So that's kind of what was good, that we wanted to then clarify them because we have to go out to bid for that. Let's go to the next slide. So we'll talk about probable costs. So we went out to bid for that. We had $1.5 million. All the bids, I think the lowest one was 1.4 million, 1.49, something there. Plus we have engineering take out of that, so it was something less than $1 million that we actually have for the actual construction. So that was really high. And one thing you don't see in any of these estimates here is it's the fence. Glad you talked about it. They're really pretty. We had comments passed that out of that 1.4, 700,000 was for fence. So we're thinking right now we're going to rebid that. We're going to come up with a new specification for the fence because made these numbers not really right at all there. So we'll go to the next one. Some of the selection, just so you know too. One thing I want to talk about is I got two posters over there. There's that map of all the sites. There's some little pictures there. I think, okay, the handout is over here. There's a handout which has all of those 91 sites listed on it, so you can see those potential if you want to see if it's in your neighborhood there. There's a map of it and then a description of the addresses. And that's how, basically all the ones we got to were, of the excellent rating. I think next picture, next slide. And, part of our what you're going to see here too, I didn't bring it up because it's the great infrastructure piece. We're going to be doing some major renovations on the pipe here in the intersections where these CSOs are going. We're rebuilding the overflow structure to either put it in an area where we can get to it easier and measure it easier. There's going to be a big one that's down on Route 1 there, orange, where it crosses there. Our CSO structure is literally in the middle of the intersection. We want to do the work there. Tom's gone through a lot. They've had to delay that bid. The state with traffic control is probably going to do weekend work to have to do this. We're going to move it out of the intersection. That'll be the one good thing. So we're doing a lot of these, but one thing is we're not building great infrastructure now. This is really maximizing the existing system we have and storing more. Because if we can store it there and then we can take it down to the plant, we can treat it.
And when we found out about this, when Lynn was talking about it, partly through attending the West River Watershed Coalition meetings, we thought, well, this is something we'd like to be involved in, but we don't quite know how, so we brought cookies and pizza. Thank you. But I did also want to say that the things that are important to birds are the same things that are important to humans. So if there's water and it's available and it's clean and it's abundant, it's good for us and it's also good for the birds, so that's what we're for. So, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for your generous support. I think everyone appreciates it. And lastly, I want to thank Ko Youngs, who teaches at the Barnard.
Barnard is a green school, and we do catch water and filter it into the underground area of our playground. We have a rooftop garden, which is over the nature center and over our library. And we've been very intentional in teaching kids how to develop bird habitat. So we've been involved in this urban oasis project over here. And at our school, we have a schoolyard habitat through Audubon. So we're getting our fingers in all of this. So my 7th grade seminar class went out and investigated our green parking lot. And we discovered that many of the same features that we looked at tonight on these slides we have installed in our parking lot, but people don't know it's there. So I've been very intentional on introducing the idea to the students that we are ahead of the game in providing a way for water to move across our parking lot and how we look at water here. And we did not do a poster session on that, but my other seminar did a poster session on the wall over there if you want to take a look at it. But I think it represents the potential of having young children investigate these ideas and represent them in the way that they can, so that when they grow, they already have an investment in the environment. So thank you very much. This was a really excellent presentation. I wish I had my students here sitting with you. But I invite you, if you have an opportunity to contact the school, you may have an opportunity for service projects, or you'd like to link in with helping us with some of the things we do here, we would love to have you. Thank you very much.
Our thanks to Gary and also to Rick Hurlbert, who's not here tonight, but he's a great guy, and he's been helping us collect those rain barrels and distribute it. And we're getting close to 100 rain barrels that have distributed to the community in the greater New Haven area. And we want to do a lot more. I have 20 of them in my backyard right now. So anybody who wants to get on our list, we will organize a training for folks. If you have a group of people who want to get together and come to my backyard, we'll show you how to set them up. We'll show you varieties of possible ways to hook them up and ways to direct the water to where you want it to go. And you can, decide what you want to do with your own choices. And, if you want more than one, we're glad to give you 2 or 3 of them, because that means I can get more of them, put more of them out there. So that's what it looks like right there. And it comes with a kit, thanks to the WPCA. The kits are free, and the barrels are free. And so it's really a worthwhile project for saving water in your own backyard. So anybody who wants to sign up, just let us know.
Let's have a round of applause for all our great speakers. Thank you. Here we are at the Barnard Nature Center along the West River in New Haven, Connecticut, for an evening of stormwater residential stormwater management. And David was kind enough to videotape this so we can share it with the community at large whenever they'd like to view it. It'll be available.